hope you're having a great day here listening to Revolution Radio. Everybody asks for this. Revolution Radio. Where the information never sleeps.
Welcome to Sacred Matrix, a divine paradigm of love and universal consciousness, with your host, Janet Kira Lessin and Dr. Sasha Lessin.
Together, we transform the world.
And now, here are your hosts, Janet Kira and Dr. Sasha Lessin.
My phone.
All right, y'all are live.
Okay, we're live, so let me do the intro. Aloha, everybody, and welcome to Sacred Matrix. I'm your host, Janet Kira Lessin, and my co-host is Dr. Sasha Alex Lessin. Our producer is Thomas Becker, also known as a Mad Painter, and you're listening to Revolution Radio Studio B. And our guest today is Joel Hodroff, and I'm going to let him tell you about himself. He's going to educate you today, so pay attention closely, because we're going to learn all kinds of things about what to do to sustain prosperity, awakening a green revolution of the heart, how to create rapid economic recovery and a healing economy. And so we're going to talk about things that you probably never heard about, or maybe you have. Sasha, are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me? What I'm
Yes,
looking forward to is understanding about. Can you hear me, Janet?
And
Hello?
I can hear you both. Can you guys hear me?
Okay. I'm interested in this dual currency and the possibility of cutting the people that are taking their cuts cutting them out and having the direct transactions. That I'm really interested in the system you developed.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. We can hear you. Sure. Time zone. Sure. I want to turn off something.
I was going to say I'm hearing echoes.
Yes. Are you on your phone?
No, I'm on my computer.
Okay, maybe you want to turn down the mic a little bit.
Sure will.
Okay, now it's not echoing. Okay, so let's begin, Joel, by you telling us who you are, a little bit about your history background and how you got on this path. And what is the path? And
sure.
That type of thing.
So I'll go all the way back to the beginning. I grew up in a family that owned a Jewish mortuary. So interestingly, that was right at the intersection of business, community service, religion or spirituality, and emotional healing. So I call that my roots in holistic social entrepreneurship before there were words for any of that. So I was born in 51. I'm 68. And the other high impact of that situation was that it was like growing up a preacher's kid. I had to be really straight and well-behaved because there were a bunch of rabbis in town, but there was only one Jewish mortuary family. So if I got out of line, obviously it was going to hurt the family reputation. And so interestingly, I'm a lot more mainstream than an average radical, yet I believe this work is transformational. It's what some people would call disruptive business models. And I was this gets interesting, dysfunctional family. I became a workaholic Jewish youth activist to cope and a perfectionist. And in 1969, at the height of the Vietnam War, I joined the Reserve Officer Training Corps. That's how straight I was. And as I sat in my ROTC classes, watching my classmates during training films applauding and cheering as bombs were falling on Hiroshima, Nagasaki, Vietnam, I started wondering, who are these people? What am I doing here? So I went out to the 69 moratorium in Washington, which was 300,000 people demonstrating against the war. I started out, I was committed to being a neutral observer, but I listened to Noam Chomsky, the academic wing of the anti-war movement. I listened to the Berrigan brothers, the religious wing of the anti-war movement. I listened to Abby Hoffman and Jerry Rubin, the hippie wing of the anti-war movement. And suddenly, as I watched police tear gassing protesters, I thought, maybe I'm on the wrong side of this deal. In fact, I'm definitely on the wrong side of this deal, because I was already learning about the United States being in Vietnam to take over the French colonial reconquest, not for any terribly altruistic reasons. So I came back, dropped out of ROTC, dropped out of school, moved out of my folks' house, and the very next event was the 1970 student strike against the war in Vietnam, which pardon my French, but makes Occupy look like a fart, a little bit more like Arab Spring in the modern world, except that students alone can't change society. So the semester ended. I think I should mention for the newbies that the 70 student strike was over killing of protesting students at Kent State and Jackson State. Most people are familiar with Kent State. A lot of times a black school in the South, Jackson State, got overlooked. So then I did a decade as a political activist, and again, a workaholic political activist. The movements petered out. I became a social entrepreneur. I worked in the solar heating products industry. I worked in the barter industry, where I got a lot of my outside-the-box thinking about exchange, not necessarily requiring the dollar. And then I built a solar adobe house, half out of recycled building materials and half on barter. So I was always putting these innovations to use in my life and sort of fine-tuning my skills. And then I had a workaholic near-nervous breakdown. A colleague pushed a book on transcendental meditation into my hands, and I began a long and winding journey of emotional growth and healing and spirituality. And these were the times when Fridtjof Capra was writing The Tao of Physics, Dan Millman, The Way of the Peaceful Warrior. And I kind of like during my activist days, where I went through a dozen different movements trying to get my head around things. I've done body work, breath work, TM, as I mentioned, Course in Miracles, Marianne Williamson's modality, Native American spiritual leadership training, warrior training, coach training. The Landmark Forum has a big curriculum. A big one was 12 steps. I had given a little girl up for adoption during the 1970 student strike because we weren't ready to be parents. We didn't believe in abortion. And I'm winding this thing up in a minute and can get to some of your questions. So I have this workaholic near-nervous breakdown. I do this journey of emotional growth and healing and spirituality. And I meet my then 18-and-a-half-year-old daughter, and her story had a huge impact on my life. So her first dad gives her up for adoption. Her first adoptive dad is killed in a plane crash when she's only 3 years old. Her mom remarries, and her second adoptive dad hangs himself at home when she's 13 years old. And you talk about issues of men and abandonment. She started acting out with drugs and boys. And when I met her at 18 and a half, she was in a halfway house recovering. And I got into her family aftercare program, which was 12 steps. And I'm going to jump way ahead because this is one of many places. Barter is a place, community currencies and time dollars is a place, 12 steps is a place, loyalty rewards is a place. I mean, I really studied so many modalities of business, of money exchange, etc. And then I tried to take the best of each and leave the flaws behind. So for Sasha, that'll be an interesting part of the money design discussion. So I figured out with my background that 12 steps, or Alcoholics Anonymous, for people who aren't familiar, and we're in Minnesota, besides where the George Floyd explosion, epicenter of that may be the spark that finally does systemic change across the planet. But in Minnesota, we're known as the land of 10,000 lakes. We're also the land of 10,000 support groups. And so if you notice, you can pay $100,000 to go to Betty Ford to treat your addiction, or you can sit in a church basement and go, "Hi, my name is Bob." The recovery is just as good, the recidivism or return to addiction just as low, but A, no money changes hands. no doctors with credentials, no technology, no buildings, no paperwork, no medication. So it's a complete non-cash alternative healthcare system that proves, these alternatives work. And they actually scale when they're done right, because you can go anywhere in the world and find a 12-step group. Countries can be at war with each other, and you can show up and attend a 12-step meeting. And the healing is the same. And later I'll talk a little bit about the design principles or the protocol that we expect to run this new business model, this new sharing economy. There's so many names for it, this healing economy, this diverse, equitable, and inclusive economy. And they come out of technology, they come out of business, and they come out of healing, spiritually grounded communities like 12 Steps. All right, why don't I put a check there that's background.
Okay, let's see. Sasha, would you like to add something, especially the history of the Vietnam War and how that affected you? Because you were a full-on functioning professor during those days. You there, Sasha? Are you on mute? Sasha?
When Nixon invaded Cambodia, all of us that were teaching at the University of Hawaii at 10 o'clock took our classes out to the Central Quadrangle, and we talked about what we knew was going on in Vietnam, that we had been excusing our students by making sure no one got too low a grade average, and we realized that sucked because that just meant poor people were getting drafted. And so we all started making speeches, and people ran up to me and said they're about to at the East-West Center, the Samoans are going to beat up the South Vietnamese, and they're fighting about which flags are up there. Do something, Dr. Lessin. So I went up there, and I got them to put up all the flags. That's all they needed, is the flags of both North and South Vietnam. And the head of the university came in with his stooges, and they wrote down the name of all the faculty members that were there, except I didn't look like a faculty member. I looked like a hippie, because I'm also a hippie. And so the next day, everybody got fired but me. And so I was a faculty advisor for Student for a Democratic Society. And when they decided that they were going to burn down the ROTC building and stuff like that, I quit, because I believed we did a lot of things together, but I agreed that I could not have anything to do with violence to stop anything, because violence just breeds more violence. So I quit. And that was it for me. I was not going to be involved anymore in anything that involved violence. So that's my little history.
Sasha, if I can piggyback on something you said, there's a lot of people in pain and frustration. Dr. Martin Luther King said that riots don't come out of thin air. They represent people with unheard voices and decades of built-up grievances. But the point is, when students were blocking traffic, breaking windows, blowing up buildings during Vietnam, they were literally shifting the debate in the public mind from should the U.S. get out of Vietnam to do students have a right to disrupt other people's lives over their point of view. And sadly, we know there's been some violence in the protests these days, but in fact, it's very hard to attribute it. It doesn't represent the Black community in the Twin Cities. There's plenty of white supremacists coming in from the outside, cruising the streets. There's professional gang members, which certainly don't represent the Black community, no more than a killer cop who does a public execution without judge, jury, or conviction represents all law enforcement. So I feel a certain kindred spirit in understanding that there's effective mainstream action that has the potential to shift paradigms or change systems and institutions. And then there's a fringe that takes it upon themselves to substitute themselves for what the masses need to do for themselves. In other words, electing a politician's a shortcut. breaking windows, raiding draft boards, and blocking traffic is a shortcut, when in fact, we're not going to get anywhere unless the majority of people come to a consciousness that says these things need to change.
So how do we do that?
Yeah, and there's other ways. There's many ways. One of the best ones in anthropology is stop participating in institutions that are harming people. And that's why I'm so interested in your ideas of money, because I think that's one of the ways of getting out of a harmful institution.
So, Janet, I heard you say in the background, so how is that done, right?
Yes, I guess I like to do problem, reaction, solution. So we kind of did a little fast forward summary of what was going on then, what was going on in 2020, what is going on in 2020. And I'm sure we're going to go back and forth on this because we have to identify what is the problem. So what is you can add more to the problem right now in the first part of the show, I guess, if you don't want to rush to the solution.
Well, yeah, I'd be happy to say some things about the problem and say why blame is like the most ineffective thing you can do. Because in fact, we've inherited a broken system, and we inherited it from an era of scarcity that drove win-lose competition over money and a grow-or-die business imperative. But today, we live in literally a world of abundance, and we're dragging around win-lose competition and grow or die when in fact win-win cooperation and sustainability, what's often called a circular economy, can take us somewhere new. So let me think for a minute the best way to come at this. I wanna say that this field that I'm describing, money innovation, what's the next generation of money, and why, for instance, even though a lot of people are enthusiastic about crypto, why that's not going to get us across the finish line? Because in fact, crypto dragged along some of the baggage of old money. And I'll say what I mean, and then I'll talk about money innovation through history so that you know that this innovation it's a scientific innovation. It stands on the shoulders of what we've learned about the changes in money through history, that they're always technology driven. But the challenge of crypto is it's one more circulating token. And I'm going to I won't necessarily describe the difference right now. It's kind of sophisticated. I'd rather we've got 2 hours together. I'd rather we be further into the conversation so that A, people agree money innovation is real and historic. B, that certain types of money have certain features and characteristics, and we want to leave some old features inherited from scarcity behind and introduce some new features that are actually already out there. I'm assembling everything you're going to hear about from existing business tools and practices. Just to give you one little peek ahead, right now, one of the biggest currencies on the planet is issued by business, and it's backed by business products and services, businesses' excess capacity, which is also going to be a big theme today. So what does that mean? It means that loyalty rewards don't circulate. They're not tokens. They're ledger entries. And so when we face money flight from communities, whether it's going to the stock market in China or Walmart global headquarters, that's a feature of a circulating token. And crypto is still a token. It rides on a ledger called the blockchain, just like the dollar rides on a ledger called Visa or rides on a ledger called bank ledgers. Ledgers track and measure, but there's no such thing as a shortage of ledger entries. So you can have food as an abundant renewable resource, global agribusiness, one of the most powerful industries on the planet, wanting more customers, hungry people in our country and around the world needing food, and all that's missing to make the match is money, our own invention. So instead of complaining about the large number in a computer called a bank account under some people's name and the small number under others and go to class war over where to get the numbers, history has taught us to invent the next generation of money that does a better job. So what do I mean now? Technology drives money innovation. We went from barter to gold coins based on smelting and metal casting. That's a fact, right? And then those two things, barter and gold coins, drove the agricultural era for 3,000 to 5,000 years. Then along came printing, which printing, paper making, ink, that is how we invented paper currency. And that drove the Industrial Revolution for 300 to 500 years. I'm going to comment on the pace in a minute. Then along came computers, the internet, mobile apps, which has driven e-commerce and digital money it's been mature in 30 to 50 years. So it doesn't exactly take a rocket scientist to guess at that algorithmic pace, accelerating pace of change, that if we get this right, and I can give you lots of examples, the sharing economy scaled to millions of jobs and billions of dollars in new wealth in 3 years. And that was an old level of mobile app penetration and social media penetration. So I'm telling you, 3 to 5 years is a long time for the current pace. So let me see what was understandable and what comes up as a question.
Well, okay, it sounds sort of like something like a virtual cooperatives. Is that what we have at virtual cooperatives?
Well, Sasha, that's a good observation because whoop, I got an echo there. Is it coming through on your side? Otherwise, I'll just ignore it.
It sounds fine.
Okay. Oh, that's right. You need to mute if I'm talking. I get it. So now, so cooperative is an organizational structure and a governance set of values. And then the design of the money is something different. And they come together. You will see that this is definitely about a high level of cooperation. But the next generation of money being based on everything we've learned from other kinds of money historically and kinds of money that are floating around today, like I said, loyalty rewards are a business currency backed by products and services. Unfortunately, they're only issued for consumer spending. So what are the problems? And what do we have to improve upon to have a better model? They are in a ledger. Ours is in a ledger. But if they're only issued for consumer spending, one, whoever has the most money gets the most rewards. Not a level playing field, not our goal. Two, 9,000 competing currencies, because these are all weapons to win market share in win-lose competition over dollars. So we're talking about not a weapon that one company uses against its industry rivals. We're talking about a common ledger that pools the excess capacity from businesses, from community organizations, from people's labor, and uses that as the basis of sustainable growth. We don't need new buildings, new banks, new insurance companies, new car companies, because they're all sucking wind today because of competition. They're all operating at a small percentage of their actual productive capacity, and far fewer could produce far more. Go back to the example, global agribusiness wants more customers and has plenty of food to deliver. And rather than using the global agribusiness model, I will suggest that the new economy will be delivering permaculture greenhouses all over the planet so people can have local organic food at a fraction of the cost of buying it, in today's market. So, yes, more cooperative. So that was two examples of how we're modifying loyalty rewards. One, rewards for more than consumer spending. How does that look? Let's reward other things we value in society. Let's reward community volunteerism. Let's reward youth academic performance or youth mentoring fellow students. Let's reward stay-at-home moms and dads. How come there's paid cooking, cleaning, shopping, laundry, chauffeuring, childcare, senior care, and there's usually moms, but stay-at-home moms and dads, unpaid cooking, cleaning, shopping, laundry, chauffeuring, childcare, senior care. In other words, if we had a way to pay people, the women's movement has been calling for this, and progressives in society have been calling for this for over 100 years. But the argument's been, who's going to pay for it, And instead of just going back to that old tax the rich, redistribute wealth, let's have a war, the so-called 99%, which is a farce, but that you can take me on that a little further in. But let's contract with merchants for their excess capacity on a dual currency basis. Enough old money to work for them at a profit, and I'll talk more about what that formula looks like, and enough new money that allows the customer to save cash and society to have a new social currency. So now the third lesson of this ledger currency called loyalty rewards is that this is so obvious. If all the rewards are for consumer spending, it's not a very environmentally friendly model. So all those other things that I mentioned, youth academic performance, reward stay-at-home moms and dads, I didn't even mention green activities rewardable, wellness activities rewardable, stretching the meager checks of our seniors who get Social Security, but that's so limited compared to the excess capacity of society. Welfare checks are limited, and you wouldn't need welfare checks if everybody got a job that absolutely suited them, and then we simply took care of brothers and sisters who actually can't work, but that is so rare. People can clean the graffiti off of alley walls. We have developmentally disabled people as greeters and card collectors at stores. People can stay at home if they can't get out of their home very easily, and they can answer phones to be of service. We just are so uncreative about full employment, but that's because it's a money war over jobs out there. So 3 ways to improve upon loyalty rewards, but take the ledger currency feature. 1, reward more than consumer spending. 2, that has sustainability aspects. And 3, make it fully cooperative across all industries and across all communities instead of a competitive weapon in the market. All right, I can pause again while you think about all that. I know that pretty much everything I say brings up another dozen questions, which makes it kind of hard even in 2 hours to explain this all. It'd be hard to explain paper currency, a banking system, a Federal Reserve in a couple hours if we were just coming out of the era of gold coins.
Okay. So I was following Andrew Yang and the basic minimum income, and then I was talking about basic minimum needs economy. And there's got to be a way that, because there's more than enough to go around, we have enough resources in the whole planet for everybody.
Exactly.
Doesn't talk, and so it's a distribution problem. And so you seem like you're coming up with something. So we're raised in a greed system and a shame blame system. Oh, you're lazy. And
right.
It's like, no. It would be so nice if the parts of our lives we could relax and enjoy life and not be a work slave the entire time we're alive, from the moment we're born to the moment we drop over dead. So I look at you mentioned you're not going to talk about ETs, but I look at extraterrestrial models to see how we can get out of this system, which is not working anymore. It doesn't work. It's broken. It doesn't meet the needs of the people. It causes corporate economic slavery. A lot of people living in misery. They're on the streets. They're suffering. They're starving. And now we have the added feature of COVID, and that's leading into these kind of I don't want to call them protests, but that have a violent side to them. And people are angry, and I understand the anger, and we've been there before, and over and over and over again. It's like we didn't start the fire. So, what is the question I'm asking? How does this compare to BMI,
Universal Basic Income?
Yes.
How does this compare to UBI? I'm sorry, right?
Universal Basic, Basic Minimum Income, Universal Basic Income, whatever you want to call it. Yes.
So first of all, the argument about lack of skills and laziness, that is so much nonsense. Tell me how 8 million people who lost their jobs in 2008 during the housing crash suddenly lost all their skills. See, that's just a cover up for what's broken in the system. Blame the rich, blame the poor, blame the foreigners coming into our country. No, blame the foreign competition. No, blame the military budget. None of those is even a factor. The factor is that money doesn't fully function efficiently, which is why this is going to transcend left versus right. The right calls for efficiency as the solution, and it says, don't force us with your laws and don't tax us for your liberal tax and spend solutions. Well, we don't have to. This is a business model. This is a creative capture and distribution of wealth. And then the left is absolutely right in saying, yeah, but all your solutions so far are nothing but trickle down. You haven't fixed a thing since the Great Depression. We've just had every manner of up and down, even though the factors of production other than money, technology only improves every day. Global economic infrastructure only improves every day. Human skill, knowledge, and creativity only improves every day. The ability to use renewable resources only improves every day. So it's actually economic nonsense that the standard of living and quality of life for individuals, families, communities, and nations constantly goes up and down depending on the competitiveness in the industry. Everything that's empty today is usually quite empty pre-COVID. So I'm not going to talk about COVID emptiness. I'm going to talk about free enterprise emptiness. Where does it come from? If any business is doing well, a dozen competitors jump in until everybody's sucking wind. What does that show up as? That shows up as grocery aisles are empty more than they're full. College desks are empty more than they're full. Movie theaters, restaurants. And again, I'm not talking about COVID empty. I'm talking about daily free enterprise. People don't have the purchasing power to go suck up those products and services. Why? Because massive proliferation of competitive duplication in the free market. Now, again, you got to get my model is a free market model because the market's a lot like a computer, garbage in, garbage out. So the radicals who go, oh, it's the market, they just don't know what they're talking about. They don't know what it is about the market that isn't working. And what's not working is that there isn't a form of purchasing power to replace what layoffs, downsizing, offshoring, and technology take away in terms of jobs. Paychecks are a 20th century way of distributing purchasing power in the 21st century. It does not work. It's a fraction of the wealth being produced, leaving masses of people in poverty, sometimes unemployed, while they have plenty of good skills to be gainfully employed, sometimes employed. But listen to this 2018 statistic from Forbes magazine. Fully 40% of the population is getting paid at the 1968 minimum wage adjusted for inflation. Now, if that's not banal, after how long ago is 68? 52 years? 52 years of ever-advancing technology. And by the way, I do want to get to Janet. You brought up people are working long and hard, and I want to talk about how we shorten the work week with a tool like this. I do want to get to presidential candidate Andrew Yang's UBI proposal. I want to talk about healthy, balanced lifestyles, lifelong learning, lifelong contribution, and lifelong balance. This whole idea you learn when you're young, you work your ass off for so many years in the middle, and if you have health and if you have savings, you enjoy leisure in your retirement. That is nothing but an old industrial age model of living. And we're in the high-tech era. So all of that is insane. All right, so I wanted to say what comes to mind, and why don't I go with UBI? All right.
Okay, go for it. And do relax. If we don't get through all this in one show, we can do another.
Yeah, let me just Let me just interject a little bit that it seems to me that at a level that's epiphenomenal to the monetary considerations is dominator consciousness, hierarchy, the idea that there has to be this win-lose situation. So everything that you're saying is right on about the monetary situation applies to everything, to the whole structure of who's got to be on top and boss the others. The function of government, the way it now operates, is theft of the resources, however they tricky it. It's still theft of resources, taking away the lives of people and having them, drafted and starving, and violence is a direct function of poverty. And so that's why I really like your system, because it tackles poverty directly.
Well, we're drowning in the wealth to eliminate poverty, but what do, Sasha? We build a gigantic Rube Goldberg machine. So think about this. Instead of giving everybody a job that matches their skills, we build a giant welfare bureaucracy. Then we build a giant food shelf bureaucracy and a giant food stamp bureaucracy. Now, how ridiculous is that? I mean, this is what conservatives are pissed off about, but they don't understand that it's the flaws in the system that led to all this Rube Goldberg baloney, because all you do is the marginal cost of production for restaurant meals or groceries at the end of the day that are about to be thrown out is pennies on the dollar. The food is 25 to 30% of the cost of a meal in a restaurant. So you tell me we need giant bureaucracies instead of letting everybody do some meaningful work? Sometime in this 2 hours, there probably won't be time, but I would like to talk about Walden 2, a utopian novel that describes a ledger system and how simple it is to measure available work and people's matching skills, to measure available wealth and people's human needs. And then there's no such thing as not enough ledger entries to make the match. And so while there's often, or always, you might say, not enough money to make the match, and I'm violently opposed to threatening people with taxes and redistribution of wealth and the creation of more debt, because it's unnecessary. We don't need a penny from anybody. And I'm going to say this, and then I'm going to talk about how everything got inherited. There's not a person alive on the planet today who had one bit of say in this design. It is more than a couple of centuries old at this point, and then we've just fine-tuned it with technology. But blame is so counterproductive, because we could all be pushing in the same direction, and we could find ourselves with ever shorter working hours, ever higher quality of life, and ever less detrimental impact on the environment based on these advancing factors of production. Now, you are right on the money about this one-up thing. Our social contract was inherited literally from kings and queens. We modified it with democracy, but think about this. Our founding fathers, and they were fathers, God bless their soul for overthrowing kings and queens and giving us like a partway advance. But they were also white, landowning, Protestant, slave-owning men. And the whole country was first founded on genocide against the native people. So baked into our social contract is genocide. It is the kidnapping of Africans to drag them over here in shackles to be our slave labor force. That social contract, that should have been in the popular discussion, in the social discourse for as long as we've all been alive, and literally hundreds of years before that, because it is bankrupt in the modern era. And, there's this metaphor. There used to be the theory of the melting pot. The first ones over here set the culture, and then everybody who came next, the Italians, the Irish, the Jews, they all had to join the melting pot. They had to conform, so why doesn't everybody? Because a melting pot is a ridiculous notion of culture. So we evolved a little bit. We evolved to the salad bowl. What does that mean? A salad could be majority lettuce. But a salad that's all lettuce, gag me, right? So we want a salad with peppers and radishes and cucumbers and croutons and dressings and onions. Okay, but let me tell you, that is wildly outdated. And as far as I know, I'm the only one with this metaphor. There's a few things I'm the only one of, but, I don't do that kind of research to find out. I'm trying to give this stuff away as fast as I can. Imagine instead the super buffet. We can have Chinese food. We can have vegan food. We can have a luscious salad bar. We can have Italian. We can have Latin. It's just insane that we try to create one-size-fits-all culture, whether it's by voting one way or the other. We're pro or against abortion. Do you know we're pro or against guns? We're pro or against certain types of support to people all over the world. What if, and this is so libertarian, and this will so drag the majority of the right and the majority of the left together, what if there's mass customization? The same way that you can put a porn block on a computer, you can tailor, you can customize this money. It's all still inside of a protocol. We'll get to that if we have time, because things run smoothly by protocol and they run like shit through fighting win-lose competition over seats in the legislature or who's the judge, etc. All right, I think I swore, didn't I? I apologize. So imagine the mass customization of communities being able to decide that our money won't be earned or spent on abortion, or our money can be. Our money won't be earned or spent on animal products, but some other may say our money can be. Again, blockchain and the customization of all those kinds of money makes this kind of custom tailoring right at our fingertips. So does, let me tell you a fun thing. If Dancing with the Stars can poll millions and millions of votes in 5 minutes, do you think maybe we're a little behind in our democracy to wait once every 4 years and vote in whoever spent the most money on media, or maybe whoever told the biggest lies? We can literally, even by the time of this coming election, I'm praying to be discovered on your show. I've run pilots that didn't scale. I've been a Visa thought leader. I've been an innovator of the year in the Twin Cities. I've raised some money. I've had pilots that were ready to go and we couldn't raise the money because, for example, I had Groupon technology 3 years before Groupon because we figured out a way to work around the point of sale terminal, which is thousands of competing protocols, by doing what Groupon eventually did, selling a coupon up in the cloud based on the merchant having a deal for us. So anyway, that is to say, I invented this in the early 90s. I started a company in 93. I got the first patents on this kind of thing issued in 97, and those patents have been quoted by others. And actually this technology of dual currency pricing, part cash and something new, that's also all over the loyalty rewards industry today. It used to be, and by the way, obviously I'm not working from an outline because you ask me questions and I go off on a dozen tangents, right? But let me just explain the technology. And I still haven't done UBI, have I, Janet? All right.
Not yet. We're here.
I promise I will, but you got to understand how easy it will be to replace taxes and debt in a new UBI by creating a system that contracts with merchants for a dual currency contract. So I'm going to explain that, and then I'll do UBI. Is that fair? And you interrupt me if I go anywhere other than, here's how loyalty rewards invented dual currency commerce a good, 20 years after I had already patented it. But, I'm not out to litigate. I'm out to get this thing born in the world. So it used to be that you could only earn by spending, and then you either had to choose to buy an airline ticket, let's say, or anything else, either all cash or all points. But you see, it's now evolved where so many places will let you redeem part cash and part points, right? You can get an airline seat. You can get a motel room. You can even get a cup of Starbucks. So now, that's half of our formula. The other half that they have figured out, but only in a few competitive examples, not as a big cooperative solution, is you always had to earn one place and redeem in that place. You earned at an airlines, redeemed at the airlines. You earned at a motel, redeemed at a motel. Earned at a rental car shop, redeemed at a rental car shop. Well, that's the whole point of loyalty. Why would you want a system where you could earn at my place and redeem somewhere else? I got to control this thing. Now, that's right. Sasha, I didn't drill down. I started with the social contract, but I didn't talk that much about where hierarchy has stayed into play. But I did mention that, millions and millions of votes in 5 minutes means that whoever's elected, the population can tell them what to do any day of the week. You flash a debate in social media and millions of people are telling the representatives, no, don't take us to war. We forbid it. All right. So now, the next evolution
it's technologically, it's so possible. It's so easy to do. It's been thought of for many. I was in experimentals with Ted Becker where you could have direct democracy whenever you need it.
Yeah. Unfortunately, people try to get these convoluted consensus models or modified consensus, and it's just small crowds of people who want to do that. But electronic democracy can be as every day as your credit card, People call into banks and get instructions by computers. So you could call into a bank or you could use an app and you could say, every Zoom meeting I'm in is now polling people. It's primitive, but it can be ubiquitous overnight. All right. So just to wrap up and then get to universal basic income, the next generation of loyalty rewards was to earn at the grocery store and redeem at the gas station. And there you had both features. You earned one place and you redeemed another. So that's the seedling of universality for this ledger currency. But then it could be part cash, part rewards. And here's why I invented dual currency out of my barter experience. A merchant can't take too many barter dollars or any other kind of, can't give too much away in employee benefits, can't give too much in-kind contribution to the community, that can't give too much off on sales. So this is right in the merchant's sweet spot to decide where's their excess capacity. You know what, Janet, before I address UBI, this is part of my explanation of how dual currency works. Is that okay?
Yes, please do what you need to do, and just keep in mind at the top of the hour we have a 5-minute break.
That's good. I need a 5-minute break. All right.
Yes.
So imagine that a restaurant knows how to use its excess capacity, and it does it by 2 rules. The ratio of cash to discount, and we call it the ratio of dollars to community service dollars, let's call them for now. I'm not going to reveal our new brand quite yet, but we're about to come out, so keep an eye on us. I know I can count on you guys to get out the word. So, yes. Ratios, what part cash, what part discount, and restrictions. This is so important. 2-for-1 dining, no Friday or Saturday night. We're already busy then. Senior discounts before 5 and after 7, because otherwise that's our busy hour. Cyber fares, certain flights only, dollar movie night only on Tuesday. And then remember, people are going to come in after their dollar and they're going to buy cash refreshments where there's plenty of money to be earned. So those are lost leaders. So end of season sales, obviously end of season fashions or products, off season sales for cruises, for retreat centers, for anything. Package deals, buy a 20 yoga punch card and get a deal. So merchants know how to give deals and they know how to say, but here's my restriction. So that's what now, I'm going to give you 2 examples of dual currency transactions. And I think you're going to get it because you're also business people. 2 $20 transactions. A $20 restaurant meal in our system might be 12 cash and 8 community service dollars. Now, why is that a win-win-win? The business, the customer, and the community. So if it's 12 cash and 8 community service dollars, 12 is just like the economics of 2-for-1 dining, senior discount, happy hour, student discount, enough cash to actually make a profit. And then the restriction will be like we talked about, 2-for-1 dining, no Friday, Saturday night, happy hour before 5 and after 7, kind of like, or after 9, kind of like the senior discount. Now, that's the economics of a restaurant, which is kind of in the middle, because the economics of a grocery store or a Home Depot is that there's very little margins, and I'll get to that in a minute. Now, think about wide margins, off hours at the YWCA or any fitness club. It's just the marginal cost of production is what economists call it, and it's just a hot shower and a towel. So the marginal cost of medications, once you've done the FDA approval, once you've done the capital equipment, once you've done the buildings, and you've sold your first $1 billion, the marginal cost of production, because that's all fixed overhead and you don't need to repeat any of it, pennies on the dollar. The staff can churn out a little bit more and get a bonus in community service dollars. The excess capacity is just sitting there and everybody wants to sell more, so they try to dump it on the third world. But that leaves our seniors wishing that they could afford it, and now our seniors are trying to buy it from Canada or online. So now back to the YWCA, where a hot shower and a towel is the only marginal cost of production for a YWCA pass. So literally the Y could charge 6 cash and 14 community service dollars and be making just as much money off their 6 cash as the restaurant is off of their 12 cash. Now, finally, the win-win-win, merchants. We bring them extra customers because there's people with unmet needs. The consumer, I hate that term, the customer, because we're not consumers, we're people. The customer, the community member who volunteered or who worked on a green team or a wellness team at their company, they saved cash. That meant they had extra dollars for whatever, for a luxury, for a better school for their kid, whatever. And then the community, instead of a throwaway coupon at the end of the day, the community's got what's now called a new social currency. And it didn't come from taxes. It didn't come from redistribution of wealth. It came right out of underutilized business capacity, which you will see then pooled together into a virtual community warehouse where airlines put in their empty seats, which people think, oh, they're so full these days. They got their big planes parked and they're flying around in little competitive, inefficient planes. College desks are empty. What's the marginal cost of a butt in a seat at a college? Until you put enough butts in enough seats that you need an extra TA or a second professor, it's damn close to nothing. Empty restaurant tables, off hours at the movies and the YMCA. There's an appropriate contract, and it's just what Sasha was talking about. It's a universal standard for cooperation. Because, again, what our activist friends don't understand is that there are business models for solving these problems, so you don't have to drop out and fight the system with just an alternative institution. You can be right on the inside. In corporations, it's called intrapreneurship instead of entrepreneurship. And the world's full of chief sustainability officers, chief corporate responsibility officers, chief diversity, equity, and inclusion officers with a huge agenda and very little money and no outside-the-box thinking for solving these problems. We are going to have so many corporate allies because we can already see with the uprising and the justified anger across an overwhelming majority. Now we're getting towards the 99% when you talk about the reaction against inappropriate police action and the long-time suffering of the Black and other communities of color. Now you can see how we might galvanize 99% of the population, but not by blaming Trump or blaming the rich or blaming the left or blaming the right or marginalizing the libertarians and the socialists. I love the saying, I thought it was the Quakers, but I might have made it up. We all have a piece of the answer, and together we have a bigger piece. All right, universal basic income. So
right, and we've got about 2 minutes, so
okay,
go for it. But
God, we're already at an hour. Sorry. Why don't you prioritize and then tell me in advance when we start what you want me to cover, and then I'll stick to the agenda the best I can. So if we had universal basic income where nobody got taxed for it and we didn't go into deeper debt, because God bless Andrew Yang and his vision, but he wants to tax the tech corporations, and anytime you go into taxing, you have a battle. And you're asking the government to do what we need to do for ourselves. See, this is all a grassroots mobilization of all consumers, because we now have a cooperative alliance of all businesses, small to large, local to global. I hate the fight over big versus small, local versus global. So we pool the excess capacity, we monetize it, just like the sharing economy monetized the excess capacity of an empty room in someone's home or an idle car. Folks, this is not rocket science anymore. It would have been science fiction 10 years ago, but we have examples for everything I've talked about. And the sharing economy took an empty room in someone's home or an idle car, monetized it, and built giant new companies. Now, that didn't solve anything. Why not? Because filtered through win-lose competition over money, hotels, motels, and their employees had to take the hit from Airbnb. Cab drivers, limo drivers, and their companies had to take the hit from Uber and Lyft. So the idea that we can't have win-win cooperation, we have to have win-lose competition, I think its days are numbered. Because when this idea of cooperation combined with profit, there's organizations all over the place preaching this, but without the details of the model, because they all operate in the old dollar paradigm. But there's an organization called conscious capitalism. There are moral capitalism, or sustainable capitalism. I mean, all these things are nice themes and good visions, but they come with no economics, sacred economics, caring economy. There's all these things where they say it's a new economics, but it's really just a new value set. I'll shut up.
The music is on 5 minutes. But
Listen to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Join Revolution Radio every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Studio B for Momentary Zen with host Zen Garcia at freedomslips.com, the People Station.
This is Thomas, a.k.a. a Mad Painter. I'd like you to join me Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Open Canvas. Don't forget to bring an open mind.
Yes, folks, that's right. Bring an open mind to an open canvas. Again, that is Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern. UFOs to government corruption. This is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
This is the people's war. It is our war. We are the fighters. Fight it then. Fight it with all that is in us. And may God defend the right.
Warning, warning.
We've got to stop them! They're going to
kill us all! See how the trouble you've started? Be they the government, be they industry, be they organized labor, be they anyone, or human beings. Time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported talk radio station, throwing ourselves upon the gears of the machine. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
You called down the thunder, well now you got it. Right! You tell them I'm coming! And hell's coming with me, you hear? Hell's coming with me!
Revolution Radio. All right, thanks for listening while we took that short break here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And yeah, we're going to get back to your host.
Aloha and welcome back to Sacred. Whoops, got a little feedback. Welcome back to the Sacred Matrix. I'm Janet Kira Lessin with my co-host, Dr. Sasha. Alex Lessin, our producer, is Thomas Becker, also known as the Mad Painter, and you are listening to Revolution Radio Studio B. Our guest is Joel Hodroff, and we are talking about the economy and how to reorganize this planet so it's fair for all. Anyway, I have these Star Trekian visions dancing in my head. So, before we get back to our show, I'd like to remind you to please go to the donation button up on revolution.radio, and up in the top left-hand corner, there's a tab that says where you put your one-time donation, and the Patreon button is for your recurring donation. And we do thank you very much for your donation, because that helps us keep the lights on, because we're still in this old paradigm system, but we'll have a new one when we're done with these shows. Dr. Lessin, do you have anything to say before I ask the question? Are you back, sweetheart?
No, this is utterly fascinating. We're looking at the opportunity that we have to restructure everything and free ourselves from this obsessive competitiveness, which says that we always have to be the determinant instead of the follower. We can embrace all of everything, and that's what goes all through Joel's philosophy, is that it's not either or, but let's take the best of both. And so that's what I'm digging about what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I love it. So what I wanted to bring up is you have all these different things that you're addressing, but we're talking about the pre-COVID world. And now we have COVID. We're actively in COVID, and we're going to have post-COVID. And apparently this pandemic, if you look at the past pandemics, this one can go for years. And so we're looking at maybe through 2021. So have you, since we're right in this, have you thought of ways to adjusting your model for these COVID times, and what will it look like post-COVID?
Oh, I love that question, Janet. Thank you. So, what people don't understand is the COVID crash is nothing but 2008 with a twist. In 2008, I love when people have seen the movie The Big Short, because it was fairly detailed on the housing crash. They didn't walk away with the conclusions I'm about to give you, but everything I'm talking about is a reflection on both 2008 and 2020 COVID. And here's what it is. The movie The Big Short ended with 3 giant statistics in red on the screen. It said $5 trillion in wealth disappeared, 8 million people lost their jobs, 6 million families lost their homes, countless people besides those 3 statistics lost some or all of their life savings, innumerable businesses went under, and then it rolled across the globe as an economic downturn. Now, there was no virus involved, but it was the exact same dynamic. We're reaching depression-level unemployment. But in 2008, if $5 trillion in wealth disappeared, I challenge you, you can't name one thing that disappeared. No technology, no infrastructure, no human skill, knowledge, and creativity, no products and services, no raw materials and energy. See, what happened technically in economics terms is that valuations fell. What you might be able to expect to get for the sale of your stock or your business or your home. But you see, valuations are just numbers in computers. There's nothing out in the real world that disintegrated. Now, it looks like we're forced into all this unemployment by COVID, but if it could happen in 2008 without a virus, then let's stop and think, well, what does that mean for COVID? It means we have 12 years better technology, 12 years better infrastructure, 12 years better human skill, knowledge, and creativity, 12 years better ability to use renewable resources. So what does that mean? It means that we don't need everybody to go back to work to the same old jobs. We are dozens and dozens of times overbuilt. And I'm going to explain this. And you see, all that we get messed with in these situations is not the power of the rich. The rich didn't cause the 2008 collapse, and the rich didn't cause the COVID virus. And in fact, here's a tiny detour. There isn't a rich family on the planet that can eat enough food to cause anyone to go hungry, live in a big enough house to cause anyone to be homeless, consume enough education or health care to cause anyone to go without. So what the rich have is a big number under their name in a computer, and these numbers can go haywire all by themselves from either COVID or a housing meltdown or whatever. So the post-COVID world, if we do this right, is going to be about taking all the unemployed who have perfectly good skills and share all the real and needed work. Now, what would real and needed work be? I urge everybody to read Chapter 8 of Walden 2, where they argued in 1950 how to cut the work week in half from 40 to 20. Now, that was fiction, except in the 30s, the labor movement argued 30 for 40, 30 hours work for 40 hours pay. Why? Because then you could share the work with the unemployed of the Depression. Nobody would lose their income. But you see, free enterprise can't do that because the company that lowers the working hours and holds wages the same or raises them is the company that becomes uncompetitive. And right after this example, I'm going to explain why we're working longer and harder and how we didn't choose it, but it's the dynamic of the system. It's nobody led us there. Nobody forced us there per se, but the system did. So now, imagine the most I've heard about the post-COVID workplace is that it's more virtual. More people are working from home. Well, that's a big yawn. That doesn't change the system one iota. But think about this. Sally lives on the west side of town and drives all the way across to the east side of town to work in the exact same insurance job that Charlie drives from the east side of town over to the west side of town to work at in a different company. Hello, and now maybe they're both virtual part of the time, but they could be working in their own neighborhood company or part of the city company just by swapping jobs. All right, that's just creativity. Another example, we have traffic jams today. Now, what's the solution? Well, COVID gave us a solution, stay home and work. But what's his name from Tesla? Mental block, come on.
Elon.
Yeah, Elon Musk says,
yes.
No, the answer is a $1 billion tunnel under Los Angeles. Now, how ridiculous is that? Let me give you a simple solution again from Walden 2. Some people like to wake up early, go into work and get home early. Some people are average and some people like to wake up late. If you stagger the workday, you need a fraction of the traffic jams. You need a fraction of the restaurants because, you fill the ones up a little bit more. It's a longer discussion what the transition looks like. I'll give you the example out of restaurants. This will sound like science fiction. This will sound like somebody has to give up income. But in fact, when we release the excess capacity across the system, everybody can have a raise and shorter working hours. So, restaurants, you might have had a few in a neighborhood, and then suddenly you got 10 pizza joints, 15 hamburger joints, 20 Asian food restaurants. Every employer's got an employee cafeteria and a what do you call it outside? A food truck. Grocery stores have coffee shops and delis, and now some of them have restaurants. I mean, we're drowning in restaurants that if they're lucky, they're busy an hour at breakfast, an hour at lunch, an hour at dinner. Can you imagine having a third of them work breakfast and lunch, a third of them work dinner all week long, and a third of them work weekends? And suddenly we just cut the work week by 2/3 with no reduction in available food. That's ridiculous. Everybody's empty more than they're full. 3 hours during an 8-hour day isn't even half full. Hour at breakfast, hour at lunch, hour at dinner. Are there some exceptions? Of course. But we don't build our economy around a few busy, exceptional businesses. We capture the excess capacity of existing. So here's what I say. In the post-COVID world, if we use a dual currency, part cash, part ledger system, if we contract with merchants on a dual currency basis for their excess capacity, and we spread that across the population, partly by dividend, it can be a recovery dividend, partly by incentives. It can be incentives for things that you do, volunteer, green activity, wellness activity, youth academic performance, mentoring, on and on, build housing where it's needed. So now we got plenty of extra purchasing power, and we've got ever shorter working hours. And that's what the new economy should look like. Every advance in technology, every advance in infrastructure, every advance in human skill, knowledge, and creativity, every advance in renewable resources, which is truly a circular economy where somebody's waste is somebody else's raw materials, just like in nature. Everything that decays feeds, trees and grass and weed and all this stuff. Sorry for people who are gluten intolerant. Now, just to wrap it up. So if we have what I call continuous economic improvement, not win-lose competition that yields ups and downs, and certain communities are virtually always down, but again, if 40% of the population is working at 1968 minimum wage adjusted for inflation, we know that what were once well-paid industrial workers or were once college graduates are flipping hamburgers and, driving sharing economy cars. Now think about this. You'll really get this, and then I'll stop. We all know the metaphor of the frog, that if you drop it in a pot of boiling water, it knows exactly what's up and it hops out. But if you let it swim around in a pot of tepid water and you turn up the heat, pretty soon you have a cooked frog. Let me tell you what the system's done to our quality of life. If somebody had said to you, this is the boiling water example, if somebody had said to you, guess what we've got in store for you? We're not only going to sort of freeze your wages and benefits and make, if you want to get ahead, 2 members of the household are going to have to work 1 or 2 jobs each. Remember, 1950s, before all this technology, a single head of household could put food on the table, buy a house, get a car, put kids in college. That was the post-World War II boom. But competition created the post-World War II downward pressure on market share, prices, profits, and wages. And the best economists can do is say, see, downward pressure on prices, everybody wins. Well, does it, pardon my French, effing look like everybody's winning in the current economy? Not at all. So now, if everything's only advancing, think about if we were to ask people, would you be willing to start out by giving up your family dinners, and eventually you're going to give up your family weekends, And a little bit further down the road, you're going to give up your family vacations. They would have laughed you right out of the room. But isn't that just what's happened? And the person who's not willing to conform to that is the slacker who loses their job or misses their promotion. That is a dynamic of the system where instead of letting technology do more and more work and passing out that productivity as raises, the system can't do that without becoming uncompetitive. So what we get is we get people chasing money at the pace of technology rather than letting technology create universal leisure through shared work. So if you had known what was coming, you'd be the frog leaping out. And now that it's all arrived, what do we see? We see lifestyle gurus telling people how to cope. People know how to cope. That's why we're so addicted as a society and we're coping with so many meds. But, it's your responsibility to meditate in your spare time. It's your responsibility to work more efficiently. It's your responsibility, to take a mental health day from time to time. Do you see how human nature, which is to be sane and healthy and cooperative with our neighbors, it used to be that way before we got a money-centered economy, when we more had a people and community-centered economy. Our work is what can be called human-centered economics and a social entrepreneurial delivery system. But you can tell, the entrepreneur operating system, EOS, is another whole subject. So there's all these things I'm not even touching on. But just imagine that instead of working longer and harder and getting more and more addicted and having it be a personal problem if you're stressed out and your kids are acting out because their parents are never around, we take a cue from COVID that said, wow, maybe some extra family time isn't such a bad thing. Maybe less transportation and its pollution isn't such a bad thing. Maybe some little less industrial pollution isn't such a bad thing. All right, you get the idea. I could go on and on about a post-COVID world based on technology serving people rather than people serving technology and money, but I think you're starting to get the idea.
Right. Sasha, your turn to comment or question.
Well, you said it's a vicious circle that the fruits of technology have been channeled to the successful corporate raiders that have been able to tear apart companies and sell their assets and consolidate and bust unions and use their increased money to influence who's doing everything. And it's built right into this system of a government whose function is to control people's property and lives, and to spin a beneficent narrative about what they're doing being for the good of everybody, when it is not the case at all. It's feeding a system where it's not a matter of shareholders like the community and the workers, but it's just a matter of stockholders, and you've got to, if you're running a company, you've got to give profits in the short term in a way that fucks the environment and your workers, and you can move overseas if you need to. And it's a system. It's not that they're evil people. It's just that this is a evil system that was set up by slave owners who basically are now in control. The Southerners have controlled the government, and they've appointed judges. And for a long time to come, whether Trump and Pence are long gone, we're going to have to deal with people that think that black people shouldn't have the same rights as white people.
Yeah, you're nailing it. But it takes a while to give up looking at some of the people and their actions as good guys and bad guys, when in fact, again, nobody chose longer, harder hours. The system drove it. And, even when President Obama, beautiful vision, beautiful skills, the system was so much bigger than him. And in fact, part of the solution is what you would call a mobilization, or taking this viral and everybody participating. And unfortunately, President Obama mobilized people to get elected and demobilized them to play the game of politics. So if we can learn anything, we need a sustained mobilization until we've put some of these new institutions in place, but not a war against anybody, because again, nobody design 2008. I don't know. Conspiracy theories are very popular. I just don't waste time on them because they don't contain a solution. They contain a lot of blame. And I heard you saying the systems at fault, and then I heard you also pointing at some of the evil people. And so we could gather the overwhelming majority of people around this fair, cooperative, environmentally sustainable agenda. And I want to say a word or two about how business innovation comes into the world and ultimately shifts paradigms. Because a lot of people think it's a matter of education. If we teach generations and generations of youth new ideas, things are going to change. But you see, I'm going to give two examples where that is not at all what happened. Nobody taught the institutions of democracy, which eventually led to overthrowing the king. There was actually mass dissatisfaction and a handful of slogans. Down with the king, no taxation without representation, liberty, equality, fraternity. And so, secondly, education didn't get us from slavery to wage labor. There was no education going on. What happened was that Northern industrial capitalism invented wage labor. Wage labor was more efficient than slavery, and a 3,000-year-old tradition was literally rolled over in a 5-year civil war. Now, sadly, we don't need war to institute massive change. The people of Nicaragua, when they came to power, abolished the death penalty. Sadly, it didn't work out for them. The people of South Africa used the Truth and Reconciliation movement. Sadly, they didn't get at the systemic roots of second-class status and, the economic roots. But we literally don't have to have a punishing mentality and who are the evildoers and we're going to get them. We have to put these things into place. And so how it works in the business world as a disruptive business model is called a minimum viable product and early adopters. So let me explain that quickly and then more questions. So you never could have taught or explained the internet into the world. It just would have been science fiction. Same with Facebook. So I'm going to use both examples. The internet began with a technical phenomenon where the Department of Defense and the campuses were trading information securely. The early adopters, techies and students went, God, look at that thing. Could we do chat rooms? Could we do email? Could we do websites? And kaboom, everything came from that. What about Facebook? You couldn't have described Facebook and got it to catch on. It would have been science fiction. But we had these electronic campus directories. So campus directories, a regular thing, making them digital, a new regular thing. But then some Yahoo hangs a girl's picture on the internet and people start voting on those pictures. And suddenly the combination of an everyday thing and a multimedia phenomenon, which is now long forgotten, the origins of voting on gals' pictures, that's been taken over by single sites or whatever, created an explosion first across the campuses. So youth and students were early adopters that led to this gigantic global phenomenon called Facebook. And the last example is kind of interesting because Wikipedia rolled right over Microsoft's encyclopedia. Microsoft had the lead. They had all the technology. They had all the money. They had all the staffing. And what happened? Somebody popped a tiny innovation into the sky on an open source basis, and it became Wikipedia. So you got to get that this isn't about winning elections. This isn't about raising money. This is about technological innovation, creativity, and then mass mobilization, starting with early adopters and not worrying about the holdouts. And plenty of conservatives who are sick and tired of the status quo that see a business model, a profit opportunity, or even a volunteer opportunity will be shoulder to shoulder, just like in World War II. We went from the depths of the Depression to full war production in 18 months without sending a single person to trade school or etiquette school. And we did it through mobilization. Yeah, government funding for war, but we've had massive war and massive government funding since then. And it's never, ever done anything like the Depression to full war mobilization in 18 months with zero technology. Now we're talking 75 years ago. Then we stuck around Europe and Japan and rebuilt them overnight. And you're telling me we can't get our own country and countries all over the world out of poverty with all this technology? It's not a conspiracy, folks. It's how waiting around for the money undermines everything. And if you've got a ledger, then there's no such thing as money flight from communities, and there's no such thing as excess capacity, because you measure the capacity, you measure the need, you make the match, and you stop producing excess. You measure the work to be done, you measure the available talent, you make the match, and there's no such thing as unemployment. And also, this is my finale, and then other questions, great. Ledgers don't crash. Ledgers don't have inflation and recession. Ledgers don't have politics interfering with them. Ledgers are simply a way to measure what there is and measure where it's needed. And we're 100 times overbuilt to meet all need on the planet. Digital stuff, infinite. We couldn't, the old economic foundation of free enterprise was scarce resources and unlimited wants and needs. Well, food's not a scarce resource. It's an abundant renewable resource. There's no unlimited wants and needs for food. The consequences of overeating are obesity, poor health, and low self-esteem. So both sides of the formula are wrong. They're wrong with everything digital. They're wrong with education. You could study all day long. You couldn't even put a dent in the excess capacity of the educational world, especially everything that's now digital. So if you get that the premises that we built our whole economic model on and the circulating token was all scarcity, and it's not a new age theory that we live in an abundant world. It's a modern reality, and it's very confusing when people go, well, money's just energy. Well, try to take your damn energy down to the store and buy something. You'll find out how useless your energy is at the store. And don't get me started on the law of attraction. Back to you guys.
Okay. And I just have to admit, my head is spinning. It's going to take a while to wrap it around everything you're saying. It's we'll slow this down, and I already sent you a date for a future show. But let me ask you.
Can you point out to people that there's lots of podcasts and lots of, what I can send you too is I can send you PowerPoints walking people through healthcare examples, loyalty industry examples, community examples, and really I reveal the business model. You're the first place that's given me such a big, not only the 2 hours, that's been amazing, but the site that you built to showcase this work in more detail. I've never had that to go along with a podcast, and this is a radio show.
This is this is part of my work in the world because I'm 66, and it's like it should have get off the pot time. We've got to figure out a system that works for everybody.
Well, God bless you, little sister. You're doing a great job.
Well, thank you. Now, my question is, and a lot of this puzzles me, but it's okay. I got to slow it down. I'll get my mind around it. I'll watch some of your things, and we'll do some more shows. But my question is, with this stimulus that came around, and there's another one coming up, probably in the first or second week of July, somewhere when our Congress, the senators and the Congress people, they have more vacations than anybody else in the world. They make all this money. So there's a real problem there. But they are going to vote on another stimulus. And what they do to back their stimulus programs is they print these little $1 trillion coins. They're about the size of a quarter, right? And they say, this is worth $1 trillion. And they put it somewhere where nobody can get to it. And then they did 2.5 trillion the first one and another so many billions for the next one. So this next stimulus is going to be $2 trillion. Now, every time they do one of these stimulus, they were passing out $1,200 a month to a bunch of people that made under $70,000 for a single and $120,000 for a couple, and they're still having problems getting that out to everybody, which you would think would just be, everybody's, I don't know. There's got to be a better distribution system, even when we get rewarded money, because some people still are not getting it. But what do you think about that? That just showed me that money is just nothing. It's like fluff. It's air. It's a little coin they printed. They're saying that we need to get money into circulation to recover this economy, this version of economy. And so that fact that the basic universal income, and it kind of everybody's going, well, that's what Andrew Yang was saying. Let's just get money into the hands of people. So the one that the Democrats passed and sitting there, the Republicans are saying, no, this is dead on arrival. But that is $2,000 a month for adults over, I think it's 18 and over, until COVID is over. And it's not like this false over, because now there's going to be another 100,000 dead before fall. So anyway, your thoughts on that?
That's perfect. I'd never heard the coin thing. See, my understanding is it's just more debt. That's where we get money in the first place. Banks loan it based on the fractional reserve system, and they loan it into the world as mostly loans to corporations to supposedly create jobs and trickle down, etc. Now, when we put our attention on the money as opposed to on the productive capacity, we can't see the forest for the trees. What does that mean? It means we're drowning in wealth and we're searching for money to distribute it. We don't need one penny of government taxation or debt. We don't need this done by the government. What we're building is a minimum viable product, a mobile app, that begins to show that if we contract we, the people, through an institution that looks a little like Visa. I could explain how, like, Visa's got four phenomenon. A new money, we went from paper currency to digital money. A new payment platform, because there's money and then there's how you circulate it, and that's the platform. A stakeholder network. You've got to have the cooperating players. And so they're already organized as loyalty reward people, as Visa customers, bank customers, and stuff like that. We need to juggle it up a little so that it's like schools and students, employers and employees, all the places where people add value in society. But that's a longer discussion. But then, so the stakeholders were businesses, merchants, cardholders, and banks. And then there's this protocol. See, things aren't run by politics in the business world. They're run by good design, and the economy was never designed. And people think, oh my God, you're a socialist. You're trying to get the government to run things. That's bullshit. The internet, Dee Hock, the founder of Visa, actually called it a cooperative anarchy. See, as long as you follow the technology protocol of the internet, you can build anything you want on it. That's legal. People do porn. People do gun sales. Can you do gun? Anyway, people do education. People do sharing about their poodles. Anything you want, you can do, but you can't build outside the protocol of the internet. Visa's got a similar protocol. It's called the interchange. If you follow the merchant rules, you can do anything you want as a merchant. If you follow the law of the land. If you follow the banking rules, you can be a Visa member. If you don't, you can't. Your card holder, you get your card revoked if you try to do anything that isn't in the card rules. So now we've got the internet run by technology protocol. We've got, and this is what I promised during the first half, we've got Visa run by commercial protocol. And then we've got the 12-step model where the saying is, our leaders are just trusted servants. They do not govern. What the hell does that mean? It means the protocol of the 12-step movement, a whole non-cash healthcare system, is the 12 steps and the 12 traditions. The 12 steps is the healing protocol, step 1, 2, blah, blah, 12. Admitted we were powerless, turned our will over to God, on and on. That's the healing protocol. And then the rules are we're non-political, we're non-exclusive, everybody chooses the higher power of their choice, on and on, the 12 traditions. And so if we build this new, and back to Sasha's point, this is a huge cooperative wealth capture and distribution mechanism that lives in the commons and can be a level playing field for the first time in human history. It doesn't take anything away from anybody. We don't need rich people's money, and we don't need the government's money. Libertarians and conservatives can flock to this in good conscience, especially when we're not regulating away their guns or their hunting rights or any number of things. Just leave them alone and let them live in their own and regulate their own communities. But that's where it also stops. They don't get to run other people's communities. So that's what we're talking about in terms of building a system that is self-funding off of tiny transaction fees on every dual currency transaction. So we're extending Visa or e-commerce that we're providing so much value. And this whole thing, we've been working on the design principles for years, and piloting and failing. And I don't know, you know the term a 25-year overnight success story. I've got to admit, I'm 2 years behind on my 25-year overnight success story. But believe me, I know I'm not the flea on the tail of the dog wagging the global economy, but I may just be at the right moment in time to catalyze this win-win transformation. See, every other power grab in history was somebody had to lose. You know, the Russian Revolution, you know, thank God the Tsar lost. He was the king and the queen. But the capitalists got swept aside and the workers won. But it wasn't win-win, you know. And so this is a win-win model that's business-led, market-based, profit-driven, but it isn't trickle-down, and it's non-exclusive, and it closes disparities instantly. The amount of untapped wealth that it would take to raise up women to equal status and communities of color to equal status, especially, you know, we got families working at 2, 3, and 4 minimum wage positions. We got hardworking people, so underpaid, so overworked. Ending poverty is going to be the easy part. Then we're going to go on to heal human relationships, to rebuild communities, to build eco-villages all over the world. How do you like this idea? A new GI Bill for youth, where at the end of high school or even before the end, there's a gap period where either domestically or internationally, young people are contributing to rapid, sustainable global economic development, and they come back to a free college education. We did it for World War II. We're thousands of times richer than we were 75 years ago. We have massive empty college desks. The new money makes up for any loss in tuition. There's no professor who has to suffer, no executive or administration that has to suffer. It's absurd that people think there's anyone that needs to suffer when technology is better every day, infrastructure is better every day. That's the old class warfare distribution of wealth model, and we're talking about the next generation of money. And again, industrial or agricultural era, 3,000 to 5,000 years, driven by barter and gold coins. Industrial era, 300 to 500 years, driven by paper currency and checks. High-tech global era, totally mature in 30 to 50 years, driven by computer money, e-commerce. But we just don't realize that even though these are only digital ledger entries, they also have scarce commodity nature. You could never lend a 7 and be paid back a 10. You could never invest an inch, a gallon, or a pound and be paid back double, triple, 100 times payback on your investment. Investment and loan interest, those are all absurdities in the world of ledger entries. And so if we take the empty college desks, which are massive, far more empty than they're full, literally a tiny handful of classes in any classroom all day long, and we promised our kids not a decade or more of debt after college, but free college for a couple of years. And what do we get? We get eco-villages all over the world where those people are earning their way because now we're funding schools. They have the skill to build schools and become teachers. They have the skill to build clinics and become doctors. All that's been missing is the money. We have the skill for them to do eco-village design and development. So suddenly it's jobs for them and it's vacation and cultural exchange experiences for us. So the post-COVID world would look like science fiction. And in a world where utopian and idealistic have become pejoratives, the post-COVID world calls us to wake up, get into the 21st century, write a 21st century social, economic, and environmental covenant using computer democracy, and then let the elections be the same baloney of left, right, win, lose, spend, spend, spend. Whereas in fact, this is what I'll end on. I think, we got 20 minutes left.
Right.
Imagine elections where whoever did the most good, not whoever spent the most money and told the biggest promises. But if you think you can impact this country's economic future, put your money where your mouth is, mobilize your people, invest in community economic development, solve this disparities thing. Don't just show us more trickle down or more government program tax and spend or more nonprofit charity. The sad thing, we now have impact investing. The private sector got us into the depression and haven't solved a thing since. Along came the government sector, hasn't solved a thing since. Along came the nonprofit sector, hasn't solved a thing since. We have all the same problems, and now we have what's called social impact investing, and everybody's hopeful. Why? Because we're starting new jobs. Well, that's not the formula, folks. The formula is use more of what's going to waste. Don't start more competing businesses. Yeah, we can use lots of new innovation, and some of it's fighting its way into the world and making a difference. And most of it is just costing jobs the way Uber, Airbnb, and Lyft cost jobs in the hotel, motel, and cab and limo industries. Do I sound a little pissed off about the fact that we keep doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results? That's Rita Mae Brown, folks. The definition of insanity.
So let me ask you, can you put this in a understandable ABC, first, second, third steps?
Sure.
Like, what is the step that we can do tomorrow so that we have a goal of this being implemented within 6 months? We need some things tomorrow because we have people starving. We have people.
Right.
July 1st, they're going to be able to evict people. They're going to be able to foreclose again. We have a horrendous culture that is so cruel to so many people, and it's all about you're lazy or you're stupid. You didn't do it right. Blame shame. So what is our first 3 steps that our listeners they can do step 1 today?
So this is where it's a little bit tough because it's not a lifestyle change. You can't say to people, go home and recycle, go home and talk to your neighbor and get along better. That lifestyle stuff is what everybody's trying, that we've been doing for decades and decades. That's not where the solution lies, but it's easy. And so people keep trying it and it keeps not getting the job done. So first of all, we do need to spread a conversation in society. I'm excited to maybe slow this down or turn it into a series of blog posts. I need a bunch of help. So make sure people know to go out to my LinkedIn site. It's Joel Hodroff, JoelHodroff. I had a blockchain team meltdown. I put together an amazing new team, but we haven't even branded, but we are moving fast. We'll have a launch within a couple of months. We already have an app ready to go, but it's a people helping people time credit app called Ying, YING. So definitely go out and look at yingme.co, I think, because it's a partner organization app. We're going to partner left and right. Folks, Visa has the dual currency technology. Amazon has the dual currency technology. The whole loyalty industry has the dual currency technology, but they're just using it to compete over money. So we actually need a group of leaders. Government could convene them, some high buck consulting organizations like McKinsey and Company, there's so many people with so much more power and reach and resource than I have. But I'm chipping away at, so one, people can share the link to this podcast with everybody they know. And I had a vision of being discovered after this radio thing. I have some talented people. I have a guy who raised $6 billion for housing to keep slumlords and flip artists from getting community housing during 2008. So we're working it. We had U.S. Bank building this technology, and the guy in charge of payments innovation, his wife died of cancer. The company jerked him around, and he walked off the job. So I have had so many near misses. It's been so painful. But I'm telling you, the world could do this tomorrow by assembling. Here's again, I can't give you 1, 2, 3, except study this by going out onto the site, inform others of it, have people get in touch with me with money, with technology, with introductions to world leaders who will actually not sit around debating things, but will give it a try. All we have to do is pilot it and work out the bugs. I'm not saying, tomorrow it'll be born out of whole cloth and it'll change the world by the end of the year, although some inventions, some paradigm shifts are just waking up to reality. When we went from the earth is flat, or the earth was at the center of the universe, to the world was a sphere and the sun was at the center of the solar system, that paradigm shifted consciousness and everything began to change. So again, over a decade ago, the sharing economy took an innovation and it scaled it to millions of jobs and billions of dollars of new wealth, but it did it in the old paradigm. Imagine that pace of innovation 10 years later with the penetration of mobile apps and social media. So one, study it and get the word out. Only study it. Actually, you can get the word out without studying it. Just some people will understand this easier out of their business experience. Some people like me may have gotten some of the insights out of their activist or their barter experience, or even out of their spiritual experience. I didn't even begin to go into how all the spiritual wisdom about we are one got me thinking outside the box about win-lose competition. And if you believe that that's a reality, then one, start acting like it. Two, start preaching it. Give up the grudge against the rich or the poor or the left or the right or Trump. I mean, I'm going to raise the slogan, help Trump lead. Trump, I'd go on Shark Tank next week, because this is a viable business model. But nobody thinks outside the box about money, economics, and commerce. It's where do we get the money? How do we beat the competitor? Bada, 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 boom. All right. Does that help?
Joel, what you have to do is what's in it for me.
That's in there.
Now, each person, so the rich don't want to get rid of their paradigm. The kings and queens did not get rid of it until the pitchforks came. And if you remember, the Tsar his whole family got assassinated at the turn of the other century. And then Elizabeth was worried about, her being the monarchy toppled. So they adjusted. They don't want to lose their kingships and queenships and czars.
Well, precisely. We built in a profit motive for one, so any savvy business people who want to get in the lead will do just fine. But then we also said we don't need your dollars. We don't need taxation. We don't need redistribution of wealth. We don't need debt. It's all sitting there waiting to be distributed through this new ledger system. And we will have a minimum viable product that makes it very obvious.
Psychologically, these people like to have somebody to look their noses down at. Okay, so we've got to address spiritually, psychologically, logically, economically. This needs to be approached on many levels in order for this to actually happen. Because I see the same thing happening with the energy systems. They don't want to we already have free green technologies. We have interstellar travel. We have everything. We have the secret space program. Everything you can dream of or imagine we have. But we have to get the win-win down to the point where they'll let go and let it happen. So we're not going to solve that in 10 minutes, but that's the problem.
Janet, let's think about this. Just this one quote. Nothing is so powerful as an idea that's time has come. And there's no force on earth that can stop the united, overwhelming majority of people in pursuit of something. What makes it look hard is that it's all framed as win, lose, left, right, us, them. And so, I don't know if you even understand. If you go back and listen to this part of the radio show, you're making it about these same old rich people being able to stop it. So let me tell you, Alvin Toffler in Power Shift explained very simply, power has gone through an evolution. And it used to be violence was power, whoever had the biggest club or the biggest weapons. Then we figured out we could get more out of people by paying them than by beating them. And so money became the biggest power. And you could buy armies or whatever. You could buy Pinkertons to sick them on labor. But you see, we're in an era of technology where the better idea is the most power. And if you believe this is a better idea, it doesn't have to come in through class warfare. It doesn't have to come in through protest. In fact, it will not come in either of those ways because that's polarizing people. And if there's a few holdouts, it won't matter. When people have all the purchasing power they need from the new economy, then those guys are going to have to recruit volunteers for their armies. They're going to have to recruit volunteers for their nuclear plants. They're going to have to recruit people to fix their Rolls Royces, and they may or they may not find them. So let the power of a better idea and the ability to distribute far more wealth than the dollar is distributing. I actually came to all this, and that's obviously a topic for another show. I came to this through the human potential movement. That when I was coming up at the same time as Sasha, maybe a few years later, human potential, unlimited human potential, that's what the book Stranger in a Strange Land was all about. And I know you pinned it on my site, and I'm excited because an Earthling baby was raised by Martians, but they weren't a puny 15,000-year-old immature race like us. They were a highly evolved 100,000-year-old race, and they literally had superpowers. Now think about this. We're made out of the same atomic material as a cat. A cat can jump 10 times its height, and it can run circles around a human, and it lies around in a sunbeam and doesn't go to the gym. What sense does that make? A cat's got something figured out that a human doesn't. We're made out of atomic matter. You split an atom in half, you get huge energy. You split us in half, and you get ooze. So if we're operating at 5% of our potential, and we figure out the key, and I might have some of that going on because a lot of this came through meditation after my workaholic near nervous breakdown. But even 20 years before I started meditating, I started playing certain games trying to tap into my subconscious. So I am on some level one of you woo-woo people, even though on another level, I'm the straightest guy you ever met, raised by a Jewish undertaker family. I couldn't color outside the lines or it was going to hurt the family income. So that straightness became a disruptive business model instead of I've been through protest, I've been through politics, I've been through psychology and religion and on and on. I think the biggest power changing the planet today is business innovation and disruptive business models. So it's not going to be rocket science to get people to give up stuff that isn't working if we start to get some traction.
Sasha, final question. We're running out of time.
I love what you're saying, Joel. I'm right with you. I especially like the idea of an Earth Corps, that you can spend time during the gap as a member of the Earth Corps. I would like to see this system applied to householders, and you could look at what is the division of labor in your own household, as they did in Walden. They said, what do we have? Who will volunteer to things? And there's the jobs nobody wants to do. Well, let's take turns doing those. So there's a lot of good things to see in Walden too. I love your stuff. Look forward to hearing more, Joel.
Thank you, Sasha. I feel it's so funny. You have to mute, Sasha. I was a little concerned by all the alien content, but I said, what the hell? Maybe somebody who from that world that I don't have much exposure to is going to go, this guy's onto something. Let's get behind him. And I can't wait to see. I won't give out my phone number, but I will get in touch with everybody who links in with me and find out what you got out of this, what your questions still are, and how you want to help. We need gobs of help, obviously. Janet, thank you for first finding me and inviting me in. This has been a blast, and look how fast it went by. I'm excited to come back.
Well, we're going to do more. I sent you a potential date. We'll talk about it offline. We have just begun, and I don't even know how I found you. It's like sometimes I feel like I'm divinely guided, and I just I go online and I go, where's next guest? And somehow I think you popped up out of LinkedIn or something.
I'm pretty sure it was LinkedIn, yeah.
Yeah, so we're getting guided because I've been, getting downloads. See, I come from the ET thing, but I wake up with these ideas on how to restructure this society, and so you're addressing a lot of the issues for me, and I do want to talk. We'll talk offline, but so once again, how can people reach you? And I will put that link. Send me the link and I'll add it to the page that we made for you.
It's just by my name. Just look up Joel Hodroff on LinkedIn. There's only 2 in the United States, one in Chicago and one in Minneapolis. I'm the one in the Twin Cities. I'm actually in St. Paul. Let's just pray for George Floyd's family and for the Black community and for the law enforcement people and for communities of color and for women as second-class citizens here and around the world, for poor countries that still face economic development challenges, hunger challenges, healthcare challenges in a world of extraordinary abundance. And Great Spirit, Mother Life, just bring us a tiny, tiny new insight about the abundance and our potential to come together as a human race. And let's try something new and get somewhere new. Thanks, you guys. This has been amazing.
Oh, thank you. We have just begun.
Take care, aloha.
Mahalo.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio.
We're an anarcho-syndicalist commune. We take it in turns to act as a sort of executive officer for the week. Yes. But all the decisions of that officer have to be ratified at a special bi-weekly meeting. Yes, I see. By a simple majority in the case of purely internal affairs. Be quiet. But by a 2/3 majority in the case of more... Be quiet. I order you to be quiet. Look, you stupid bastard, you've got no arms left. Yes, I have. Look. It's just a flesh wound.
I don't believe I've seen such a display of courage, skill, nerve, grace, and stupidity.
I'll do you for that. Oh, what? Come here. What are you going to do, bleed on me? I'm invincible. You're a loony. The Black Knight always triumphs.
Roundtable Live Monday through Friday, 1 a.m. till 4 a.m. Eastern Time. Bring your mind, bring your ideas, bring your voice. King Arthur had nothing on us here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com.
Please, Hi, Karl Marx here. I am all seriousness today, my friends. There is this show you must not listen to. The Ultimate Remedy with this guy, LB. This guy has figured me out. I hear it on Tuesday, and he is telling the truth. I mean lies. Stay away from this guy. Where's my good hairbrush? Anybody see me? Mama!
Want to learn more about the Marxist agenda and other important stuff? Listen to The Ultimate Remedy with L.B. Bork, Tuesdays, 6 p.m. Eastern. Right here on Revolution Radio.
Find some comfort at Willow's World.